Good evening, I'm Katerina Georgieva. This is CBC Windsor News. Thanks for watching. We learn more about the Ambassador Bridge blockade at the inquiry in Ottawa. Plus, a downtown business owner says he's fed up with vandalism in the core, but a local leader says things are actually getting better. A permanent location secured for Windsor's Youth Wellness Hub. It means easier access to mental health help. And Americans are off to the polls today for the midterm elections. Republicans are expected to regain some power, with eyes on Michigan, where abortion is literally on the ballot. New details tonight on the pressure the Prime Minister and Doug Ford were facing during the Ambassador Bridge blockade, both expressing frustrations during a phone call days after the bridge was shut down. A readout of that call was made public for the first time today. CBC's Chris Ensing joins me now live in studio. Chris, you're following this for us. This comes out of the Emergencies Act hearing today.
Yes, Kat, it came right after the lead police officer in charge of developing and executing the plan to clear the bridge said that they didn't experience political interference. This call happened on February 9th. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau asking Premier Doug Ford for an update. It starts with pleasantries, but quickly turns into a frank and colorful conversation where Ford says he wishes that he could direct police. Here's some polls from that transcript. Trudeau wanted an update from Ford. Ford said, the bigger one for us in the country is the Ambassador Bridge and the state ground there. The Prime Minister replying, a whole bunch of people are looking at this and saying we can't even clear up a protest on a bridge, saying the police of jurisdiction needs to do their job. That's Windsor. Ford says about the OPP and police, I can't direct them. I can't call them and say, get your asses in there and kicking ass. It's up to the OPP. Trudeau again stresses how important this bridge is to be reopened, talking about the financials, saying they can't talk this out for 3 weeks. They need to act immediately. Ford agrees, replying, this is critical. I hear you. I'll be up their ass with a wire brush. All of this happening on February 9th, the second day of the bridge protest. At this point, the ask has gone in from Windsor to the provincial police for more resources. And today we heard from the lead OPP officer in charge of creating and executing that plan, Superintendent Dana Early, who says that there was no political interference, but recalled a phone call where a senior OPP commissioner told her that the bridge was a priority, and that call came the morning after the Premier and Prime Minister had just spoke.
And Chris, you heard from a man who attended the protests. What did he have to say?
Yes, Paul Elishad was focusing on letting people know that he saw this as a peaceful protest. Now, we've heard police testify under oath that there were bomb threats made against the police and the mayor. We heard a bylaw officer was spit at and needed a police escort to their car, and that protesters circled officers who were overwhelmed and outnumbered at the beginning of this protest. Every night of the demonstration, Elishad, who is a contractor with 3 kids that lives in Essex County, would come to Windsor and observe the protest. He said because he didn't trust mainstream media. Now, he testified that he had friends lose jobs and businesses because of the mandates that were put in place, which the protesters were against. Here's a bit of his exchange with the commissioner after his testimony.
I mean, I've been concerned over the past couple of years of the impacts that were happening to our businesses from a whole bunch of different, for a whole bunch of different reasons.
So more impact was not a concern to you?
I mean, I'm concerned for anybody's businesses that are negatively impacted, but to gauge whether one is more severe than another, that wasn't something that I really.
Now that's about the impact to the auto industry, which both the Prime Minister and Premier were feeling the pressure for. That's it for Windsor now. We'll probably hear more when the federal ministers start to appear towards the end about what happened at the Ambassador Bridge, but the Premier will not be testifying. He's refused. A court has ruled that's within his rights. We do expect to hear from the Prime Minister. Katerina?
Thanks for this, Chris. CBC's Chris Ensing live in studio tonight. Canada's Public Safety Minister is defending his government's use of the Emergencies Act to break up last winter's protests in Ottawa. Marco Mendicino made the comments during a visit to Windsor today. He says the inquiry happening in Ottawa will also help his government formulate a policy to give authorities like the CBSA expanded power to step in should another bridge blockade like the one in Windsor happen again.
Indeed, I think one of the important questions will be whether or not we need to update our existing legal authorities so that all branches of law enforcement can more quickly mobilize and coordinate their efforts to make sure that we can address this new type of threat.
Part of his tour included a stop at the Liuna Training Center in Tecumseh. He was promoting the federal government's fall economic statement funding announced last week, which included more funding for CBSA officers.
That with all of the loss that we've seen across our communities, it is so important that we continue to double down on our investments at the border. The fall economic statement also provides $137 million additional federal dollars for the good people who work on the front lines of the CBSA. And with this money, we're going to see more boots on the ground. What does that mean? That we can get trade and travel going back up to pre-pandemic levels.
As for Windsor's bid to have the government reimburse the city for the $5 million it spent during the bridge blockade, Pedicino says he will, quote, stay in touch with Mayor Dilkens about that. Ontario schools and Windsor's Catholic schools reopened today after a 2-day work stoppage. CUPE education workers and the government are back at the bargaining table. It comes after the province promised to end its back-to-work legislation, and as a result, the union ended its job action. As Trevor Dunn reports, the Premier is striking a softer tone today that some hope will lead to a deal.
Just days after trying to knock out a strike with a legislative punch, it's now pacifism from Premier Doug Ford.
I don't want to fight. I just want the kids in school. That's what I want to do. You know, I'm past the stage of fighting.
With a promise from the Premier to take his strike-busting legislation off the table, Ontario education workers are now off the picket lines. And after 2 school days at home, students return to class and parents are breathing a little easier.
It was definitely a hectic couple days, but you know what? We overall supported the ECE workers and support staff at the school, so we understood and we kind of just held it together for the couple of days, and we're happy to be back at school now.
This needs to be about the kids. We can't have a piece of legislation that says it's about kids but really isn't. This actually needs to be a conversation now about supporting workers who are supporting kids, because that is the purpose of the building that's behind me.
CUPE's 55,000 workers may be back on the job, but they're still without a contract, and bargaining resumed today. The union is optimistic that the two sides aren't just heading back to the same stalemate they hit last week.
What's changed? What will happen differently at this point?
Well, I think what's happening at this point is that we're coming in knowing that we're on the right path, knowing that we have a great amount of support.
The government says it's also trying to avoid another impasse, announcing today an upgraded deal that will benefit CUPE's lowest earners.
Well, I can't get into details. We're back at the table with an improved offer, particularly for the lower income workers.
Ford's new and improved offer doesn't surprise this labor expert.
I think Bill 28 backfired on his government very badly.
He says the backlash against the legislation and unified support from private sector unions has given CUPE a boost that the Premier can't ignore.
The public clearly blamed him for students not being in school, and so that gives the union more leverage in bargaining, and it puts increasing pressure on Doug Ford to get a deal.
It may be heading back to the bargaining table, but the government doesn't appear to be in a hurry to do away with Bill 28, something that is set to happen when the legislature resumes next Monday.
We're willing to come in tomorrow. We're willing to come at midnight tonight.
The opposition NDP and CUPE want the legislature recalled early so the bill can be repealed immediately. Trevor Dunn, CBC News, Toronto.
As negotiations continue, parents in our city are reacting. One Windsor parent agrees with CUPE's job action.
I don't think they should make it illegal. If a worker wants to go on to the strike, it should be their will. No government should stop them, because if they think whatever is happening is not as per what they want, so they should be allowed. When you will ban them like that, then what people will do? They will go on the protest, and although the life was impacted for the parents, but still, this is the way how it should be.
The large front window of an iconic downtown music venue has been smashed. The owner is growing increasingly frustrated with vandalism in the core and worries it's making it more difficult to stay afloat. At the same time, the new incoming councillor says the downtown is getting better. The CBC's Jason Vio has the story.
And we'd rather just have small businesses get kicked in the teeth constantly.
Tom Lucier says he feels defeated after someone smashed the front window of a business he's owned for 19 years. You can hear it in his voice, an act of vandalism he's endured before.
But this is absurd. Like, it is impossible to make money downtown when this happens.
Lucier says he's considering putting up plywood and painting it to prevent more broken glass. But what he says he would really like to see, healthcare resources in the downtown helping those with mental illness and drug problems.
Don't push them down the street. Figure out how to get them off the street. That's it. The money is not being spent.
Instead, Lucier estimates he'll have to pay about $2,000 to replace his own window. He may be able to get half of that back. The Downtown Windsor Business Improvement Association offers a program to help with glass that's been vandalized at downtown businesses. This year, they've paid out nearly $3,000 for 6 claims, and that's up from 3 last year.
It's kind of the cost of doing business. It's nothing new.
Incoming Ward 3 Councillor Ronaldo Agostino says a window at his downtown business has been shattered twice this year. Still, he says the downtown is on an upward trajectory, and it's improving. Once he officially takes a seat around the City Council table this month, he says his main priority will be improving the core.
I think one of the things that we need to do down here is really try and get more foot patrol. You know, try and have more of a police presence or a private security presence of people walking around, more like ambassadors.
He envisions the team as people who proactively support downtown Windsor. Agostino says you'll never stop all windows from ever being smashed, but hopefully initiatives like this could mitigate vandalism. Jason Vio, CBC News, Windsor.
A youth wellness hub will soon have a permanent home in Windsor. The service provides youth between the ages of 12 and 25 with immediate access to mental health and addiction supports. By spring, it will be located at 215 Eugenie Street. Despite receiving annual funding from the province as of last year, the local CMHA branch says more is needed.
The more operation dollars we can have, the more we can provide those specialized services. Now, I mean, would anyone want more money? Absolutely, but I'm very grateful for the investment of what we have today. At least it's a starting point, and we can demonstrate that the need is there, and we'll continue to strive for those dollars.
So far, the organization has raised about $2 million of its $5 million goal. Since March, the hub has temporarily been located in Windsor's West End, and has helped more than 300 youth. One Youth Hub member says a space like this is needed and would have been a big help to him during a difficult time.
I first got arrested when I was 16, and they gave me the option to go to different programs instead of going to jail. And the wait list for that was 3 months. And in those 3 months, I've overdosed. And my principal did CPR on me, and my mom found me, black and blue. And I was dead for 3 days. And the impact that had on my family and myself, and realizing, okay, something's got to change. And it was really, really scary because I obviously wasn't planning on that growing up. You know, just as a little kid, you know, 6, 7 years old, I just wanted to be happy, wanted to be successful, and I just wanted to be loved by everyone. And, you know, my life turned for the worst.
Indigenous Veterans Day is being marked with ceremonies and commemorations across the country.
As an Indigenous member, this is one of the biggest honors I've ever had the opportunity to have. This is the Canadian Armed Forces Eagle Staff. It is a representation of Indigenous people in the military.
In Ottawa, Indigenous veterans and active members of the Canadian military made presentations and spoke with students at a local elementary school. There was a panel discussion and an adaptive sports demonstration. The event was hosted by Veterans Affairs Canada. Members of the Métis community braved a wintry day for a remembrance ceremony in Saskatchewan. It was not open to the public, but it was live streamed. An estimated 12,000 First Nations, Inuit, and Métis served in the significant conflicts of the 20th century, and at least 500 lost their lives. It's election day in the U.S. This year's midterm balloting could be among the most consequential in American politics in quite some time. And across the river in Michigan, there is so much at stake. And that's where we go now. Ellen Morrow joins us live from Lansing. Ellen, you're at an election event right now. Set the scene for us.
Well, Katarina, we're in Michigan's 7th congressional district, and this is a crucial district tonight. We know the goal for the Republicans in these midterms is to take back the House. This district is considered a toss-up seat. Incumbent Alyssa Slotkin facing challenger Tom Barrett. We're at Slotkin headquarters tonight. We will hear from her later on this evening. As I said, a toss-up district. This has become one of the most expensive races in the country. Tens of millions of dollars pouring into this race on both sides. And we've really seen this race play out in the same way we've seen these themes of this election happen nationally. We've heard Alyssa Slotkin trying to make this race about democracy in the United States. Her challenger, Tom Barrett, is on record making false claims about the 2020 election results. She's also tried to make this race about protecting abortion rights in this state. Barrett, her challenger, has been talking about inflation. So this is really a litmus test across the country to see which of those issues is going to matter most to voters. And as I said, this is going to be a crucial district for how things turn out with the House of Representatives tonight.
And Ellen, you mentioned abortion, and abortion rights are literally on the ballot in Michigan. So what are you hearing about Prop 3?
Well, Prop 3 is a ballot measure. People can vote yes or no. It's separate from any other race, separate from party lines. Yes or no on whether to enshrine abortion rights in the Michigan state constitution. And this is such an important vote because Michigan has a law on record from 1931 that's an abortion ban. No exceptions for rape or incest, an abortion ban that state Republicans have already been trying to bring back into effect after the fall of Roe v. Wade. That's currently blocked by the courts, but Prop 3 would get rid of that law altogether and enshrine those rights in the state constitution. It was put on the ballot by petitions. More than 700,000 people signed a petition to get that on the ballot. There's a lot of support for it, but the polling has slipped. Last month, there was more than 60% of people in favor of it. Now we're seeing about 52%. So that's going to be another huge vote to watch this evening as well. It could have ripple effects because if it doesn't go through, we're going to see court battle after court battle trying to protect those rights in this state.
Thanks for this, Ellen. CBC's Ellen Morrow live in Lansing for us tonight. Let's take a live look outside there at the Ambassador Bridge connecting our city to Michigan. Today was a crisp day. Tomorrow it's going to be a bit warmer, getting up to 16 degrees. Colette Kennedy will be here after the break with more. Stay with us. Colette Kennedy joins us now for a look at our weather forecast. Colette, temperatures today felt a little bit crisper than they've been for the last week, but I think they're going to get warm again.
Yeah, it was a little cooler today, and this is the thing, the roller coaster ride of fall is they're going to warm up and then much cooler into the weekend. So I want to get into all that detail, but now I'm going to talk first of all about what's happening in the tropics, because the hurricane season does still go to the end of this month, so the end of November, and there is action here. In fact, what was subtropical Storm Nicole has become tropical here through the day, and this is a hurricane warning along the east coast of Florida, and then there are tropical storm warnings, the areas that you see here in orange. I know we do have a lot of snowbirds and also just folks that are trying to do some travel and this kind of thing, but it's also important because this moisture is going to be coming up the eastern seaboard eventually, and you know, likely not to have an impact on us thanks to that same cold front that's going to bring the cold air in this weekend. So let me just show you here. Looks like landfall, well, first of all, coming across the Bahamas as a hurricane, Category 1, and then landfall for the east coast of Florida after midnight on Wednesday in the wee hours of Thursday morning. This will be the latest they've seen in the season since records began for eastern Florida to get a direct hit from a hurricane this late in the season, and then the trajectory takes it up the seaboard, and that's where we get into that moisture I'm talking about. I know these temperatures are not tropical and don't feel tropical. In fact, we'll see our overnight readings, because the winds are going to shift a little bit coming off the lake, as you're already beginning to see, it should help to hold them so that our low only drops another couple of degrees. That's what I'm hoping for here. High pressure still in place, though, so mostly clear conditions. And in fact, that ridge is really protecting us. So we get into the sunshine again after a clear night tonight. Tomorrow, we'll see quite a bit of it. Then, as we see Thursday rolling in, it starts Wednesday, but Thursday, the southwesterly flow really kicks up, and that's going to be pushing our temperatures up even more. As that ridge slides away and a low is moving in, it's the force between the two systems. So that warm air is going to kick our temperatures up to, by Thursday, 20 degrees, but I'll tell you, not a bad day tomorrow either, so a couple of good-looking ones for Remembrance Day ceremonies. Looks like the showers will hold off till later, and I'm not even going to speak the temperatures for those overnight lows on the weekend.
We don't even see those single digits. No, we're going to tune them out for now. Thanks for that, Colette.
You're welcome.
We will have more news updates for you right after the break. Stay with us. Leaders from 120 countries are in Egypt discussing the next steps in tackling climate change. Canada's Minister of Environment says this country needs to do more on that front.
We need to have an open and frank conversation about loss and damage, which countries like Canada and many developed nations have refused to do so far. We've tended to park this conversation in a very technical area, refusing to have real political conversation about this. And I've seen it firsthand how incredibly frustrating it is to developing countries and to countries that are feeling we're bearing the brunt of climate impacts.
Many countries in Africa and Asia are already dealing with high temperatures, floods, and drought. That's prompted many speakers at COP27 to urge wealthy countries to focus on climate change despite other international crises such as the war in Ukraine. In Winnipeg, high school students got a lesson about climate change. CBC's Emily Brass reports.
Students filed into classrooms for a different kind of lesson.
You are going to have 4 rounds.
The Climate Action Youth Forum is aimed at getting teens working together, even when they might be competing.
So I'm going with 1.
Same. The game got them thinking like politicians, pushing them to make tough decisions on addressing climate change on a budget.
Sometimes they'll trade, they'll barter amongst themselves and work as a team.
Nature is our greatest teacher.
The museum itself is also part of the lessons, showing students how people in the past fought adversity to create change.
I believe that is what us youth need to hear, that these small actions that we take are important, and we are the catalyst for change, and we are the future.
So when we think about action projects for climate change,
Another session tackled ways to turn fear over what might happen to the planet into hope.
Stressed, anxious, climate anxiety, but also it's empowering in a way that after all these generations of people, not doing anything, that we're the ones that are finally taking a stand.
Learning about climate change can be really overwhelming.
Organizers say the key is taking action. They recruited local groups to give workshops on making a difference in your own backyard.
When you think about climate change, a lot of times the images that people put up are of, a polar bear on an iceberg, or they talk about sea level rise, and that isn't always relevant to a kid in Winnipeg. It's really important to make the issue real, to make climate change something that you can look out the window and see, so that you feel like it's within your sphere of influence and within your control.
Students head back to school with action plans for things like planting trees and promoting public transit. Each school gets a $500 grant to make it happen. Emily Brass, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Before we go, the Earth, the Moon, and the Sun aligned one last time until 2025. Take a look at this, a total lunar eclipse. We have some images from San Salvador, from Indonesia, and from Toronto as well, which you'll see in just a little bit. Now, the moon could go dark or it could turn into a blood moon. It's really cool. Take a peek if you can. That is it for CBC Windsor News. For news anytime, go to our website, cbc.ca/Windsor. And thank you so much for watching and have a great night.